these people, Ricky. You're a winner. You got the gift. Always remember, if you ain't first, you're last.
If you ain't first, you're last.
See you when you're grown up.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. Welcome to episode 75. Getting up there, guys. Dang. But I am your host, one of your hosts, Gus Manti here. We got a great guest on here tonight. We chatted big time about tournaments, a lot of successes that our guest Nate Osfar had. And it was really cool to chat with him about that. We're for sure going to have him back on again. We hope that everybody enjoys that. But before I get any further, let's introduce the other members on here tonight. None other than, let's do Brian. Let's get Brian up here first. Brian, how you doing tonight? What's going on? What's happening down there?
Yeah, I'm doing good here tonight. Had a great talk with Nate. Interesting to hear all of his stories throughout the years. Super experienced in the musky tournament scene, so it's always fun to hear. Yeah, haven't I had that golf trip this past weekend. Back held up all right. I'd like to use it as an excuse. Did not slap it around too beautifully, but was 2-1 in my 3 little Ryder Cup matches, so we ended up winning as a team, but fun all around weekend. A couple late nights down there in Madison.
Sure.
Yeah, a couple banged up mornings for sure. So good times.
Good times were
Max,
had.
big old smile on your face tonight. How you doing?
I'm good. You meet any new friends down there in Madison this weekend?
Yeah, I'm always making new friends, networking.
Good.
You know.
Glad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. No, I'm glad. Actually, funny enough, I put out a little poll here before our episode just to ask people who they wanted to get on and whatnot. We got some great suggestions, so thanks to everybody who wrote in. But one big takeaway I got from some of the write-ins was Gus. People actually want Brian to start doing some more of the intros. Couple people wrote in, so they love
Wow.
Brian opening up the episode.
Ooh.
So we might have to mix that in moving
Whoopsies,
forward
yeah.
here. But yeah, great interview tonight with Nate. Like Brian said, just a very experienced guy in the muskie tournament scene and just fishing in general. So a lot of good stories, just kind of overall great conversation. So let's just tee that up. We'll catch you guys on the other side.
All right, here on the line tonight, we got our guest Nate Osfar on. We're going to chat a bunch about tournament fishing. He's been doing it for a really long time. Some of you might know him from some of the placements he's had in the PMTT, as well as some of the other tournaments that used to go on here in Wisconsin, also over in Minnesota. But we'll chat on that more so tonight. So without further ado, Nate, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming on here tonight in pretty short notice. We definitely appreciate that. But let's I think for those that don't know, I guess I'm sure plenty of people listening that, follow the muskie community, follow the PMTT and tournaments like that, know who you are, but maybe run a quick little background check here just for those that don't know before we dive a little further.
Okay. I guess I think I've been fishing muskie since about 1989, 1990. I started 9 or 10 years old. So have been doing it quite a while. Became pretty obsessed with it probably in the early 2000s, 2002, 3, something like that. And I guess at first just did a lot of fishing with my dad and on the lake that my parents live on. And of course, you get the kind of get the need to explore. So I ended up dropping out of college because that seemed like a good idea, and buying a boat, and pretty much fished. I probably fished almost every weekend of muskie season from 2004 until now. Missed very few in that time. Started fishing tournaments in 2005. I think I fished my first tournament, and that was I guess Manitou's Chain was the closest WMT to where my parents live. They're in Winchester, just south of Presque Isle.
Yep.
So the Manitou's Chain is pretty close. There's a WMT there. I had never fished it. Fished a lot of the Winchester and Presque Isle lakes before that. So I started fishing the Manitou's Chain very heavily. I mean, it's only 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes from my parents, so it's convenient. And fished the WMT in 2005. I guess the takeaway from that tournament is you can't catch fish in a tournament at noon the way you catch them at 8 o'clock at night when you're fun fishing. It's a little bit different, and I guess I was a pretty quick learner. I fished again in 2006. I think we took 9th in 2006, got a decent fish, and we fished the Hodag that same year. And we chose Oneida Lake as our lake, and we got a 40 and a 41 and took 4th in that out of 183 teams. So for our third tournament, not too bad. But then I started fishing a lot more, kind of got the hunger for it, and the need to compete. I really enjoy it because it makes every fish exciting again. You catch enough fish, and the small ones kind of, any fish at first gets your heart going when you get bit, but after a while you see a 35, 36, 38, whatever. It just doesn't quite do it for you anymore. But now you put $20,000 on the line, and suddenly it's exciting again. So yeah, I started fishing a lot of tournaments. Took me until 2011, I think, to win my first one, and that just happened to be on the Manitou's Chain. It was a WMT out there, and I did a lot of deep open water fishing for many years, and we got all 3 of our fish out of like 38, 40 feet of water. Had a nice 46, 41 and a half, and a mid 30s, but that was enough for the win. And funny story behind that is one of my good buddies was in first, and he was fishing alder and wild rice. I registered the 41 and a half at like 11:57, and the tournament was done at noon. So when he went to the alder check-in just to make sure he was still in first, and they're like, "Yep, no other fish caught." So he drove all the way to awards thinking he won. And then he got there and saw that I had caught a fish in like the last 10 minutes. And the story is, he's like, "I hated you for a little bit that day," is what he always tells. But we ended up winning the championship the same year on Pewaukee, and got a couple nice fish in that. It was a tough bite. And that was the Saturday of the tournament, was the first day I had ever fished Pewaukee. Did no pre-fishing, and I caught a 45 3/4 and like a 40-incher. And that was when the Medusa first came out, and it hadn't really caught on in Wisconsin yet. And like any lake I took it to, I could just count on multiple, 2 to 4 bites every day. It was almost a given. And yeah, all the bites we had were on Medusa for that tournament. We did not catch any on day 2, but the 2 fish from Saturday held up for the win, and that was 40 grand. So that was a pretty nice win there.
That's a big one, yeah.
But Matt Rayleigh and I fished against each other at that time. We were good friends. We fished for fun a lot. He was fishing with Jeff Van Remortel at that time. And those 2 decided to stop fishing together, and I was thinking I was taking time off from tournaments because I just wanted to focus on big fish. But then when Matt was available, we decided to start fishing again and start fishing tournaments together. And we started with we fished the Hodag couple, we won at Eagle River. I think the second tournament, third tournament we fished together, we won. That was at Eagle River WMT. And then started fishing the PMTT the year after that. And I think 2013 was the first PMTT we fished together. We got a few fish, qualified for the championship. It was, I think, St. Clair or Chautauqua, somewhere far away. We did not go to the championship that year. But 2014, we won Cave Run, then we won Eagle River. So we had the back-to-back wins. I think Mille Lacs was the next one. Yeah, Mille Lacs was the next one, and there was like 6 fish caught out of 90 teams. It was a tough bite, but there's two big ones. Some buddies of ours got a 55.5.
What?
Yeah, but in 6 days of fishing, I caught 143 inch on Mille Lacs. It was just really low density.
What year was that?
I think that was 2014.
Okay.
And the championship was on Pewaukee. We caught a couple fish, but wasn't enough for the win. I can't remember if Sennett and Hammernick won that one. It was either Sennett and Hammernick or a couple. I think Sennett and Hammernick might have won that one. Because I know we tied for Top Gun with them. And by the tiebreaker rules, they beat us, and we got second for Top Gun. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a blur, honestly. All the tournaments. We started fishing basically the whole trail after that, and did that for a number of years. I know we thought we had the win again at Eagle River in 2015 on the way to awards. Brian Krell, my current tournament partner, called me, and he's like, "You guys get a third fish today?" I'm like, "Yep," and I'm like, "How'd you do?" And he's like, "Well, we got 2." I'm like, you had one yesterday too, didn't you?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How big were yours?" He goes, "How big was yours?" I said, 34 3/4. I'm like, "How big were yours?" And he's like, 42 3/4 and 36 whatever. And I started doing the math in my head, and I'm like, "So you're telling me you beat us?" He's like, "Yep." So it was a really fun first half of the ride to awards, and then it was just kind of like, "Oh, that sucks." Because I mean, hey, there's another. Well, yeah, there is something wrong with second place. I guess I fished to win.
Yeah.
Right.
Not saying I'm so good I'm above second place, but as you guys know, if you ain't first, you're last in a muskie tournament. The payout goes down considerably from first to second. So
yeah, it's true Ricky Bobby spirit for muskie tournaments. There's no doubt about that. I guess, man, there's a lot. I got a million questions, but I want to start, I guess, just kind of backing all the way up to the first tournament, kind of comparing it to, how you go about things now. But that first tournament you ever did, I mean, I guess what was the hype level like, I guess, or the excitement kind of compared to nowadays? I mean, do you still get as amped up fishing tournaments? I mean, I think back to our first tournament we ever did, Gus, and it was just I remember the feeling. It was just so cool, thinking about putting that first fish in the bag.
Yeah, the heart was pumping just on takeoff.
Yeah, just on that takeoff, we were in our little Ranger boat with, I think, a 45, just getting dusted off the line by everybody else. I think it was the Spring Classic in Eagle River. But yeah, take us back to that first tournament. Like, how old are you? Who are you fishing with? Kind of what tactics were you doing, the pre-fishing wise? I mean, were you just pouring your kind of heart and soul into that first one? And be curious to hear about that. Yeah.
And then also on top of that, we know what they are, the WMTs, but maybe just quick touch on what those were for maybe the listeners that don't know, because I don't know when the last one was, but they haven't been around for a little while.
Okay, yeah, the WMT was the Wisconsin Muskie Tour, which it had a pretty good following. for a number of years, and there was some issues with it as well, and I'm not going to get into, those, but it went from WMT, and I called it the WMT. There might have been a couple where they actually called it the Pro Mac for one reason or another. But yeah, the Wisconsin Muskie Tour, they had numerous tournaments throughout Wisconsin. And at the time, Mark Lajewski was kind of the guy to beat. He was winning a lot of them. And that was one cool thing about fishing tournaments is you got to meet and got to know a lot of really good fishermen. And you also got to see how they approach a bite, how they're fishing spots, baits, their throw. You don't really get the chance to do that a lot of times unless you happen to end up on the same lake as somebody. So seeing that many good fishermen compete, I'd say it's a pretty good way to learn. And generally once you start catching, the other guys notice who's catching fish, and as soon as they find out you can catch fish, the information starts flowing a little bit more freely because then they're asking you questions as well. And usually you ask a question and then, a question is asked in return. So there's kind of a trade-off of information after the tournament, and you start putting the pieces together. But I would say I thought I really knew what I was doing for the first tournament, but I really didn't know what I was doing for the first tournament. I had caught plenty of fish. I on multiple different lakes, everything like that. But like I said, it's different when you're not the first boat through on the cherry spots that you're so used to fishing, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 or 5 other boats fishing the same spot that you wanted to fish. So you end up having to go to a B spot or a C spot. And I think the first tournament, there was like 116 boats on the Manitowish chain, something like that, 118. So on 3,000 some acres of water, I think that's about right, 3,500 maybe. That's a fair amount of boats. And I would say the Manitowish chain fishes a little smaller at certain times of the year. I guess it's always got a really good open water bite early, but that was a late August tournament. Fish were transitioning into weeds. So, we were fishing a lot of weeds, rock structure. And we did contact fish. We had a couple chances, but definitely not enough to win. And I wish I could tell you exactly what we did, but that was through a lot of rubber and crankbaits. We always fished a little bit deeper than most, and fished a lot of rubber and crankbaits on, deep weed edges, mid-lake rock humps, stuff like that. And in retrospect, I think the bite was a little bit shallower that tournament than we were fishing. And I guess initially my tournament, I thought you always have to be doing something different than everyone else. And there is some truth to that. But if the fish are shallow, you gotta fish where the fish are, or where the concentration of fish are, or you gotta have one spot with a pocket of fish that nobody with a pack of fish nobody knows about, that you can go beat up. I've had it go where, the tournament we won in 2011 on the Manitowish chain, that was deep water in late August when most of the open water bite had died. But I found, like 2 weeks before the tournament, there was like a mega school of Cisco's on this one point, and fished it, didn't move anything. And I went back like the next weekend, and the Cisco school was still in like the exact same spot. And I just figured at some point there had to be, that Cisco school had to move up in the water column at some point, and there had to be muskies around it. my partner, I had told he got to pre-fish a couple more days. He was a college professor, so he had summers off. So he went a few days earlier than I did, and I told him to go fish. Go fish this spot, and he sent me a picture of a 43-inch tiger like an hour later. And I told him, I'm like, okay, we know they're there. Don't fish it again. And then like the next day, he sent me a picture of 42.5, and I'm like, you didn't catch that on. Well, yeah, I had to make sure they're still there. I'm like, they're still there. Do not
leave it alone.
Don't throw another cast. But yeah, we caught all 3 fish and lost like 3 others. And we had the spot completely to ourselves. We had that lake almost to ourselves.
Jeez. Yeah. What you said kind of resonated, because I remember the first tournament we did. It was like we were on the Eagle River chain in the Spring Classic, and that's a lake, we've been fishing probably for almost 20 years now. And I remember we felt lost out there, like out of nowhere, because, we fished a few of our cherries. We didn't see fish. And then we looked around, and kind of what you were saying, there was a boat on every single spot that we had liked. And we're like, oh, well, I guess all these people know all of our spots too. And we didn't have any backup plan or any really idea on how to change gears or anything like that. I mean, to think about, the difference between how we fish now in tournaments, even after just a few years, and that first one is quite drastic. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with how much you learn musky fishing wise from fishing these tournaments. There just doesn't really seem like a better way to exponentially shorten your learning curve on how to catch these fish.
No, it's definitely a great way to learn, and you get you can gain confidence in a lot of different ways to catch fish. And like I said, you find out how the tournament was won, and you're like, well, I never even thought of trying that. I guess I got to try it. I guess when I first decided I really wanted to learn as much as I could. I'd take weekends where, all I'd throw for a weekend is like a death raider. And I'd force myself to learn how to catch fish with, different kinds of baits under different conditions and now throwing a death raider for a weekend isn't a great way to, catch as many fish as you can, but you are going to get some bites on it, and you're going to learn which, when it's a good presentation to choose, and
right.
I guess I started doing that a lot with, different kinds of baits and getting confidence in fishing them and fishing, different spots and how to fish them. And I guess I've always been a weekend warrior. I get, my vacation time and my days off. I don't really have time to fish. I've got the Wisconsin River right here, which I do fish it occasionally, but not near as much as I probably should. Because there are a lot of big fish, and the stocking they've done there, and it's an unbelievable fishery now, but it's heavily pressured, and there's some different musky leagues that are always there, and I just don't really get into it that much. So my fishing is generally well, at one point in time it was started Friday after work and usually ended with a late night Sunday drive home. As I've gotten older and got some more responsibilities around home and stuff like that, it's generally a Saturday, early Saturday morning to midday Sunday. And then as I get into the fall, I'll fish till dark on Sunday. But so I get a day and a half, 2 days to catch fish. So regardless of the weather, conditions, anything like that, that's what I get to fish.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good way to force yourself to get good at, catching fish, under all conditions. I know a lot of guys I'm buddies with, they have more forgiving work schedules, or, like Matt Rayleigh, he's a guide, the only time he's going to go fun fishing when it's like perfect weather, everything like that. I just don't have that luxury.
Yeah, feel that. I mean, that's kind of the life Brian and I live. We're kind of living vicariously through Gus over here, who gets to be on the water, damn near every day. But I do want to ask just kind of a random question back to the tournament stuff. You talked about all these tournaments that you won. Obviously, you guys won the PMTT championship a handful of times. I think three, maybe more, um,
Three.
three times. Could you identify maybe one tournament where you feel like you fished a perfect tournament where like everything kind of came together, and it was just like lights out compared to everybody else, or is it always kind of just been like a scrappy dogfight to get these tournaments actually won? Because I think the one thing Gus and I are trying to figure out is how to kind of get through this curve of, or I guess get over the hump of stop taking, a top 10 and actually win one of these damn things. We haven't been able to put the pieces together to do that quite yet.
So I've always called that, you got to close it, you got to close the deal. And I wouldn't say there's a lot of things have to happen right. Okay. We all know there's a ton of skill involved in musky fishing. There is an element of luck. I think the skill comes from getting the bites. You don't get bit. Well, once in a while, yes, bites. People do get lucky and get bites, but when you're getting enough bites to win a tournament, that's not luck. That's skill. Now the luck comes into a lot of times converting the bites into fish caught. A very good tournament fisherman I know who beat me regularly when I was younger told me one time, secret to winning a tournament is getting 3 bites, putting 3 fish in the net, and making everybody else beat you. And his takeaway is in a day and a half tournament, 3 fish would win most of them. So don't worry about anything else except getting your 3 bites, putting every fish in the net, and then making everybody else catch more. And I didn't, he kind of told me, he says, well, winning tournaments is simple. I said, what are you talking about? He's like, you get 3 bites, catch every one of them, and make everybody else beat you. And a lot of times that's how it works. I hate saying it, but that's really you have to eliminate, you're always going to have some bad luck. Fish are going to get off. You're going to, your stuff's going to go wrong. But you gotta, I guess, anything you have control over, you have to eliminate those mistakes. I guess I try to make every bite count. I don't throw baits in tournaments unless I absolutely have to that have poor hooking percentages. I'd rather get 2 bites on a bait that I know I can probably put both fish in the net with than get 5 bites on a bait that I'm going to lose 60 or 70%. So I guess I play the percentages, for example, glide baits. Now I will throw a glide bait on Cave Run in April because it works. But otherwise, like, I don't even have I honestly don't have a glide bait in my boat most of the time. I did pull one out this past weekend. It was a tough bite. I got bit on it and I missed it, and that's just maybe I suck at throwing glide baits, but they just always seem to have lower hooking percentages than I like. But I can think of quite a few tournaments we've fished where I don't know if I'd say it was the perfect tournament because there's always the stuff that goes wrong. And the second championship we won was on the Iowa Great Lakes, Okoboji and Spirit. And we found with a little local assist, and I guess I try to be friendly with everybody, and I do get a fair amount of information, from others. And if somebody wants to tell me, hey, check this out, I'm gonna check it out. I don't go looking for it, but if a guy that I had befriended before and we had fished together, well, it just so happens his grandparents had a place on Spirit Lake or one of the two for many years, and so he knew him pretty well, and He told us to check out a certain area, and we did. And although we did not find fish in that particular area, adjacent to it, there was a weed edge, and that's where all the fish that he thought would be there were sitting. And we fished it once and caught 2 fish in like 5 minutes, and then we didn't touch it again until Saturday of the tournament. Now, Saturday of the tournament, the wind was blowing like 40 miles an hour from the opposite direction. We were fishing it, but we weren't fishing it. I mean, Matt had his big bay boat, so I mean, we were fishing as good as anybody could. But I've fished Iowa fish multiple times, and for some reason, the wind turns those fish off. And I can't tell you why that is. We did get one bite there on Saturday, and we tried some other areas, and but as we had driven through, I mean, they're probably 2-foot waves, but driven across the lake, and Matt was eating a sandwich, and I was fishing, and all of a sudden I heard a big clunk, and I look up towards the bow, and he's holding the trolling motor is in the water on spot lock going in circles, and he's holding onto the power cord of his Altera.
Jeez.
And he's saying, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. So I run up there, and I'm like hitting the foot pedal, but when the trolling motor fell off the boat, it pulled the foot pedal power cord right out. So the foot pedal was no longer connected. And he had a plug for his trolling motor. I've got mine hardwired, but he had a plug. So he's like, pull the plug, pull the plug. So I pulled the plug. Well, the quick release bracket was for that style, it was a saltwater quick release bracket, which means it was all plastic. And apparently just from the pounding of waves over that year, it was, I think, the first year he got the boat, or second year maybe. Yeah, I think second year. That plate had grown weak. And I mean, thankfully it didn't fly off while we were going across the lake, because I mean, it could have either went into the side of the boat, B, hit us in the face, an Altera hitting you in the face at 40 miles an hour.
Oh, not ideal.
Not good at all.
So we have a backup Tarova in his truck. So we had to pull the boat, and this is during a tournament, pull the boat, go put the Tarova on. And of course the quick release plate was shot. So we had to, pull that quick release plate off, re-drill the holes, mount the Tarova, basically mount the Tarova flush to the bow during the tournament. So I mean, we end up losing like 2 hours a day one. And the wind died, we did not catch any fish. And some buddies of ours, the Mickligs, were in first with a couple fish. And the wind died Saturday night. We went to our spot Sunday morning, and by 10 o'clock we had 5 muskies and lost fish. So I mean, that was a case of knowing exactly what needed to be done. The conditions just had to be right.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the conditions were right, we went 5 for, we threw baits that we didn't lose fish on. We went 5 for 6 and stacked them up and got the win.
That's a hell of a day.
So I guess that's what I'm saying about, you can't, there's some stuff you can't control, but I guess I will say an Altera trolling motor has let me down in so many tournaments. I would never own an Altera.
It's good news.
That's probably the
Similar
first
things.
that's probably the first of 5 times we had to go to the Tarova during a tournament.
Jesus.
Jeez.
Wow. That's
Does he
brutal.
just run a Tarova now the whole time?
Well, Matt, Matt still runs the Altera, and I guess the newer Alteras are better. I think they're a little bit better than the first models. But
Okay.
this happened with like 3 different Alteras.
So this might lead into this might be a good transition to my question for you, but is there a specific like heartbreak in a tournament still kind of haunts you or that you'll always remember?
Oh yeah. 2016 Madison chain. We caught a 40 and a 43 to start out day 1. And towards the end of day 1, we found it was on Wabisa, and we found one milfoil patch that everybody missed. And it looked so good, and I got ripped there on a Medusa pre-fishing. So I was throwing the same Medusa. And I remember I casted it kind of right down. It was in like 3-4 feet of water, shallow. And threw the Medusa kind of parallel to the edge, and I popped it a couple times, and I went to pop it again, and I had nothing but slack line, and cranked as fast as I could, set the hook, and I can tell you it was 47 1/4 inches, and we'll get to that, why I can tell you this. But this 47 1/4 incher comes flying out of the water. It was 60 feet away, 70 feet away. It was a fairly long cast, and it probably jumped 3. When they're that far away, I had my rod tip buried trying to keep it down, but there was just nowhere for it to go but up. Mm-hmm. And like the 3rd or 4th jump, I got my Medusa back, and it was just crumpled up into a little bitty ball.
Oh no.
And so the hooks were buried in the rubber, and just no way to catch that fish, I guess. I don't know. I still don't think I really, well, I will get to one thing I think I could have done better eventually today. But so the next day we went to the spot that we got the first 2 fish at on Monona. I got another 40, lost one. So now we had 3. Feeling that, 3 over 40, that's pretty good triple. And we went to the last, or the, it was going to be the last spot of the day on Wabisa, and we were going to go, try to get another one there. It was sunny and flat calm, and well, there happened to be another boat, our buddies, the Mick Legs, that were fishing this little patch of milfoil, and I guess Ben Micklig's nickname was always the Sniper, because if he didn't miss many fish getting caught, and he was really good at catching fish. So if he saw you catch or lose a fish or whatever, he saw you fishing a spot, he's gonna go fish it. And he's like, well, one time we were giving him a hard time about it, and he's like, well, if I see like you or Lajewski fishing a spot, I know it's got to be a good spot, and there's got to be muskies there, so why wouldn't I fish it? Which I guess I got to give him credit, makes a lot of sense. So we see the net in the water a little bit later, and I see him lift a big fish up, and day 2 comes, and here they got a 47 1/4 incher, which I will guarantee you was the fish that I lost on that spot the day before. Mm. And they got like a 42, and they tied us. And the tiebreaker rules were whichever team caught a fish on both days, which both of us did. Second tiebreaker was whichever team had more points in either day. So they had, we had a 43, a 40, and a 40. They had a 47, a 42, and like a 39 or something. So because they had more points in one of the days than we did, they got the win and we got second. So not only did I dump a big fish, but that same big fish beat me.
Oh, and a double tiebreaker.
That's fucked up.
And cost us about $16,000.
Jeez.
That's
Well,
true.
maybe.
So
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
yeah, I was just gonna say you were kind of hinting at it. I mean, what could you have done differently with that fish, if anything, or what did you learn from it?
I guess I've switched to, I use a lot of thin, really, really sharp hooks on, and even smaller hooks on. I used to always use big 7/0 quadruple X heavy hooks on Medusas and rubber and stuff like that. And I use a lot of BKKs and owners and, round bend, wide gap and smaller. And it just seems like you lose your hookups are so much better. I mean, I remove, I would say on 90% of the baits I buy, I take the hooks and I've got a big bucket in my garage and I throw the hooks in there. And then every once in a while, I'll put a hook grab bag up on Musky Flea Market just to get rid of them.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess I believe hooks are a lot more important than people know. And I'm a big fan of, super sharp hooks, especially with rubber. The downside is some of the owners and stuff, like they've got rather small barbs. If you let the fish do too much head shaking, I think they do have an easier time throwing them than say like a 7/0 BMC. But my normal tournament routine is bury the rod and power crank and just get them to the net. And if you do that, you lose very few fish. I did dump a tournament winner a few weeks ago in the L'Oreal tournament, like a 40, probably. I had said 45, but I caught a 44.5 since then, and the fish I lost looked a couple inches bigger, so I would say it was probably at least a 46. And it was literally 3 feet from the net on a Medusa, and I was just pulling it up to get it in the net. The bait just popped right up. Yeah.
Oh,
So it still happens, but
Yeah. Well, maybe on a brighter note, then talking about some of these big fish, I don't know this, so I'm actually curious to know. What is your biggest fish you've caught in a tournament?
biggest fish in a 48.5.
48.5.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was cave run pre-spawn. It was probably a 35 pound. It was really fat.
Oh, I seen that picture.
That's awesome.
It looks like a giant.
Yeah, I thought it was over 50 when it jumped, but no, I've never caught a 50. Matt caught a 50 in St. Clair in the tournament. Pretty sure I lost a 50 last year in that Leech tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw it, but it was I had caught a 45 like 20 minutes before, and the fish I lost felt just
Substantially larger.
substantially larger than the 45.
Those
I set the
sorry.
hook and just nothing moved.
Jesus.
Dang. So for those Minnesota tournaments that you kind of been doing recently, do you just know those lakes well from the PMTT going there, or did you ever take a weekend where like I'm gonna go to Leech or I'm gonna go to Vermilion or something like that? Did you take some time to go to those lakes, or pretty much tournaments brought you there?
Tournaments brought us to Leech. I used to fish Western Minnesota a lot back in the heyday, and it was just stupid easy to catch bait. Yeah, I mean, I got there probably after it was really good. I mean, I've got buddies that, I mean, they tell me stories about catching 6 over 50 fish in solo in a 24-hour period. But
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
unbelievable.
we had
know,
Mike Kramer on. He was telling us about that. It just sounded insane.
yeah, we'd catch 2 to 4 50s in 700 days of fishing, which was pretty good.
Well, let me ask you this then. What's the, I guess if you have one, the lake you found the most fun fishing in a tournament?
I guess I do like, although Leech can be really frustrating, and I've had more frustrating days in tournaments out there than good days, probably. You know, we did win out there last year, but I do like fishing the big, you know, big water and stuff like that. And there's the chance for a big fish. So I guess that makes it a little bit more of the lakes I've fished tournaments on. Leech is probably my favorite. We did fish PMTT on Vermilion, and that was those Vermilion fish just like to follow so much, though. I mean, we saw so many big fish in that tournament. And, we caught like a 42 or something. It was not a. We did very well fishing rubber pre-fishing. I mean, we had like a 50, couple 47s, a 46. I mean, we did really well on rubber pre-fishing. And it went from sun and, you know, kind of calm to some wind and some clouds. And we didn't, I guess, we got burned by the blade bite. We learned firsthand that those Minnesota fish really like blades, and you get the right weather, and if you're not throwing blades, you're not going to catch many fish.
Yeah, I mean, Gus, would you say that we found that out firsthand at Vermilion last year? I mean, all of our action came on blades, and poor Gus was ripping rubber out of the back of the boat 98% of the time, and I don't even think you got a look. And I pretty much everything that we came across just came up on me on, you know, large blades. That was predominantly what we were moving and catching fish on. And then I guess real quick, I'll just ask, and, you know, I don't want you to throw any certain body of water under the bus, but do you have a least favorite lake that you've ever fished a tournament on that you're just like, fuck this place?
With soda.
With soda.
Yeah, see how I didn't even hesitate?
Yeah.
I figured there would be maybe one or two that would come across your mind.
Yeah.
What grinds your gears out there?
There's two of them, with soda and Cass.
Okay.
I don't think there's anyone that has fished Cass Lake as many days as I have and not caught a muskie. I've probably spent at least 10 days on Cass, and I've never caught a muskie there.
Jeez.
Just got your number.
I told my buddy that the only reason I would ever go back to Cass Lake is to watch them drain it if they're ever going to do that. But I would never fish Cass Lake again in my life, and that's true.
If the PMTT goes to Cass next year, will we not see see it there?
You will not see me.
What was the PMTT on Wasota, or was that a different tournament?
There was a championship on Wasota.
I haven't heard a lot about that fishery. Is it kind of dying off, or?
Well, the problem is the tournament boundaries cut off where a lot of the good spots were. And I think there could have been some good fishing there, but there was a bridge you had to go under to get to like Little Wissota and parts of the river. So I can't remember exactly how it lays out, but I have a buddy that's a good fisherman in that area, and he's like, well, yeah, he's like, I was going to tell you guys where to go, but yeah, you can't fish there, so don't worry, you know. And there was, I think, a 39-incher won the championship.
Oh my
give you an
God.
idea of how bad the fishing was.
That's
So
brutal.
there's been a lot of really brutal tournaments out there that you've been a part of. What did you go to the Green Bay one where they caught
No,
one?
I didn't. Thankfully, I didn't.
That's right.
I mean, that's how Madison felt this year, and damn close to how Eagle River felt, you know, 2 weekends ago. I mean, that was just wild. I've never seen that. I shouldn't say never, but that was probably one of the harder 2.5 days of fishing I've seen out there in a very, very long time.
I'll agree that, yeah, it was, I don't know. Well, I fished the Spring Classic enough times.
True.
I can say I've had, you know, we caught 3, nothing big. I mean, I don't know where I was most frustrated because we didn't contact a fish over 38 inches. Yeah, we took second, but I really thought, I know Gus saw me out there a couple of weeks before the tournament, and oh boy, I the way that day was going, I was thinking, oh, this is gonna be an easy win. They're eating the exact bait I want them to eat, exactly on the spots I want them to eat. And,
Yeah, I saw you with the net in the water. I was out guiding that day, and it was good. I think you ended up asking me, and I was thinking of a different day. It was a good day. I think we went like 3 for 5, and one of the ones that we lost was really, really big. You know, a good chain, mid-40s probably, but they were definitely snapping in all the right areas. And then the chain just slowly got worse and worse and worse until the PMTT championship, it felt like.
yeah, and even the Wednesday before the championship, we had a couple good bites, and I felt okay about it, but then it was like Thursday it got worse. Just the lack of wind really seemed to kill it. The wind we had on Wednesday seemed to counteract the warm weather just enough that the fish were still at least thinking about eating. But yeah, those were some tough days. And I mean, Brian, my partner, who knows, he's won the PMTT out there twice, just as many times as I have, and knows it much better than I do, and has caught way more fish out there than I have. He had one bite in 2.5 days.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah.
I think I had 0, so I was battling it. It was pretty rough. One push to bucktail, tried or missed or whatever, where you're burning blades, it hits the surface, the blades engage, and there's a big old swirl, and you feel your bait move, but there's no weight there. So it's like the fish missed it, or I don't know what happened there, but it was very frustrating though, for sure. Do you, in really, really difficult tournaments, do you have any sound advice out there for people? Nothing, particular to a certain body of water maybe, but just a few things that maybe you do in your head to get you back in the game, or, a certain tactic that might get you going again to potentially get a bite, if that's really what it's going to take in a tough tournament.
Well, I guess, fishing something like Eagle River, fishing slop is, if you have to get bites, that's a good way to get bites out there, is fishing slop. And which we did a ton of, and we did get bites doing, we did get some bites doing it. But I guess cover contact with baits, and actually normally I'd tell you I'd be throwing a Medusa the whole tournament, but it just did not seem like they wanted to eat one. And
They did not.
2 of the fish came on baits I've never caught a fish on till that day.
Oh.
And the third fish came on a bait that I've caught. I think that was my third fish on it, and I never caught a tournament fish on it.
You guys were going deep in the box.
Really digging, yeah.
Well, I should say 2 of the baits were, it was a big dive and rise jerk bait, and I probably netted 10 fish for Rayleigh on the Eagle River chain on that bait. So I may not have,
Yeah,
I may not have caught him, but I knew it worked out there. And
Gotcha.
As I'm cycling through baits that I know work out there, I think I caught our first fish on my second or third cast with it. And then I went to use it on day 2, and I couldn't find it. And then here it is on Brian's rod.
He just needed that. That actually sounds like our Brian.
Yeah, seriously.
So I had another one that was just a couple inches smaller, and I'm like, probably doesn't make much of it. I'm going for a reaction strike. So I put that one on. The second fish I got was probably my fifth cast on that bait. And I bait landed, I went to pull it once and the fish was already on. So, and another buddy I talked to said almost all of their bites were like impact or one pull. So I think part of it was putting that bait on the fish's head.
Yeah.
And getting that reaction strike. But yeah, I guess there was fish off the break. I saw multiple fish on SI. I got one of them and that was one that was a blind. But as I was seeing that, I started throwing more casts out off structure a little bit, and I got bit. On day one, missed it. All right, lost it, had it hooked for 3 head shakes. And we did put a fair amount of time into fishing outside of structure just a little bit. You know what I mean? Basically, rather than boat cast length off the weed, we had the boat at cast length off the weed edge, but we were casting parallel and out rather than at the weeds.
Yeah.
We saw other fish on SI doing that, but it sure didn't seem like they had any interest in biting, and they were sitting right on it. It seemed like we were trying to, trigger inactive muskies, which just doesn't always work. So I guess we just put a lot more time into shallow weeds, knowing that it seemed like if you could find them up there, they would eat, and just fished, I guess, as many good spots. I mean, we both been fishing the Eagle River chain for a long time, know a lot of spots. So, I mean, I burned a lot of gas. I don't think there was during Paul's Pro-Am, the weekend before. Was that the weekend before?
Yep.
Yep. There were areas that had huge concentrations of fish. There were, and there during the PMTT, I don't think there were spots that had big concentrations of fish. I think those fish were fairly spread out. And if I know it's a tough bite and I know where a pack of fish is, I'm going to probably fish one spot all day or 2 spots. You know what I mean? I'm going to wait that pack out, but I didn't get the feeling that there was a pack of fish on any spot. And so we just covered a lot of water, fished fast, tried to get that reaction strike. And that's how we got our bites. 2 of the fish did come off the same, close to the same spot, but I sure didn't get the feeling that there was a bunch of fish there. The bait wasn't right. There was some bait. It just didn't feel like we should sit here and grind.
Yeah, the chain went into a full-on funk. I think the lack of the wind, and I don't know if you noticed, there's basically like no current running through the system.
No.
There's been lack of rain for a long time up here now. Made it really tough. We saw the same thing with the side image fish off the breaks. I mean, we casted at probably between the 2.5 days, definitely 25 plus or more, maybe. And it's just one of those times where you're right. That was trying to trigger inactive fish. Because I think even some of the people that got them trolling, or that one team that made it to day 3 trolling, they were talking about how they would run up onto the break lines and hit the weeds with their baits, and they were trolling blades or something like that. And Max and I actually witnessed them on a few spots, and they were definitely bouncing out, and then they would really bump into basically where we were damn near casting, in certain areas. But that's not always the case out there. There's some times out there in the summer where I swear I was getting like excited if I side imaged one off the break. You'd just be like, all right, toss the rubber bait at it. It's probably going to eat. And then there's times this year on the chain where it felt like you'd run into 70 fish before you got one of those things to eat. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what they were doing out there. It just, a lot of fish went dormant, inactive, but it was a weird bite.
The team you're talking about, the Barkers from the kid and the...
I think so. Yeah.
think they were trolling little crankbaits, little fire tiger crankbaits.
Okay.
Yeah, that or blade. I thought they said blades or
Maybe
you know, who
blades.
knows.
They were on the
Don't know.
one. They were on the one area where, for us, like I would agree that most of the fish felt really spread out. But where I got mine, we realized we kind of screwed up. That there was actually another hot fish in the area that was different than the one I caught. After going back and watching the video on Gus's head cam, he had raised a fish previous to the one I caught that was actually smaller than the one I ended up catching, and we at the time thought it was the same fish. And then there was two other areas throughout the tournament that there was just two fish sitting within about 15 to 40 yards of each other. But like I agree that not a typical chain deal where there's 6 7 fish, it feels like, piled up on one specific little area. For the most part, we were running and gunning. I mean, we probably fished well over 40 spots between the 2.5 days. I mean, we would fly in, hit some cherries, fly out, and just kind of keep doing that systematically. And it just was not, it's just like, it felt like we were just pretty much standing in front of a wall, hitting our head on it the entire time, because it was like, all right, what is this either going to eventually work, or are we just going to do this until we go freaking insane? But yeah, it was an interesting one. I mean, I think the whole year, the trail, each stop, the bite was pretty tough for the most part. I'm hoping that next year maybe the stops either are in different places where the bites are a little better. I never minded hard bite in tournaments, but yeah, this year just felt tough. I mean, Madison was tough. And Tonka obviously had its challenges. I know you guys weren't there, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll lead into this question. You've been fishing the trail for a while. I don't want you to beat on the trail or anything, but you've been doing it for a long time. You know the ins and outs of it. Are there anything in the PMTT trail that you'd like to see or maybe change a little bit on how the tournaments are structured, whether there's more of them, less of them, different locations, stuff like that? Anything come to mind?
Well, I guess when we first started fishing Cave Run, I think it was a tough bite, but it was a pretty fun fishery, and there were some big fish.
Mhm.
I mean, the first 3 years we went down there, whether it was in the tournament or pre-fishing, we caught at least one good, we
Mhm.
got a 46. The first fish we caught out there, he caught, was 46, nice fat pre-spawn fish. And I got that 48 and a half the next year. And the year after that, I think it was 44 or 44. And we'd always get like a 44 plus at least,
Mhm.
and that kind of made it fun, at least one quality fish while you're down there. And the last championship we won down there, I think there was a 49 and a 46 caught, but man, there was like a pile of low to mid 30s. And we caught 8 of them, and that's what we needed to do. So I'm not complaining, but it seems like you would think now, however, 4 or 5 years later, that those fish would be growing up. But, I talked to Greg Thomas, and he's like, yeah, we don't know where those fish went. They're gone.
That's good to hear.
I think a lot of those fish go up the river now where we can't, pass tournament boundaries. Cause I know,
Mhm.
I talked to Greg before the tournament, and I asked how fishing was. He said it's pretty good, yeah, I'm getting a couple every day, a couple few. And he's like, but I'm, not fishing where we can fish in the tournament. Like, oh, that's great. So I guess I would like to see something different for the first tournament at some point. I mean, I look at Ohio and I see some of the results and what some of those guys are doing there, and it's like, why can't we go there? I mean, they're getting some big fish now, and seems like a 3 fish day is like average.
Right.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I think that'd be a cool place to go. Something a little different, maybe not quite as far as Kentucky. I mean, that drive sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Illinois and Indiana, or Chicagoland and Indiana is brutal. especially if it's windy.
And the drive
That's
there
always
is
windy.
always much better than the drive back.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, I mean, we were talking a little bit. I hadn't even really met you yet, but you were like, yeah, I got to go to work tomorrow morning. And I was like, yeah, same here. And I'm sitting there looking at the clock. It's like 3 p.m., and I'm sitting in middle of rural Kentucky and I got to be in Minneapolis, come 8:30, 9 a.m. the next morning. I'm just like, this is going to be a long, you know, 14, 15 hours. Um, but yeah, would you ever maybe see the trail ever, instead of going to like Eagle River Three Lakes, ever maybe making a stop at like a Minocqua chain or a Manitowish Waters chain or something of that nature?
Well, and I guess Eagle River was off the trail for a couple years, and then they came back for the championship.
Mhm.
I'd kind of be surprised, honestly, unless Tim, I mean, you guys know how it works, right? I mean, whoever writes Tim a check,
Mhm.
whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or, Tourism Bureau, whatever, that's where the tournament is,
Yeah.
that's his reason for putting on the tournaments is to make money. I mean, so I don't think Manchester Waters is ever going to pay him to come there.
Mhm.
At one of the last WMTs we had there, and I can't prove this, but and I don't even know if I'm supposed to. Members of the Lake Association put roofing nails in all the landings for us
Oh,
because
Jeez.
they thought we were going to bring invasives.
Wow.
Um,
Oh shit. Yeah.
so,
so probably not going back to Manitowish Waters.
Yeah, they don't want us.
and now it's a little bit, you know what I mean? It's a little bit different now than it used to be. So I guess maybe they're not quite as much Nazis now, but I mean,
That's wild.
I guess I'm just trying to think of other alternative options in the North Woods that could support, 100 boat field. Like even doing a Phelps deal where, you get to like a Cass Bemidji thing where instead of that, you have the tournament on an LVD, a Big Sand, a North Twin,
I
almost kind of like a lake group deal. I mean, it would be
yeah,
kind of fun. Just to switch it up, I mean, a little bit.
I I would love to see it. I would love, and I'm sure you could make the suggestion to Tim to try and seek it out. I think he would listen.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, maybe you need to get the community, to reach out and I mean, I guess I'd love to see one in like Namakagon or something like that too. I mean,
Right.
you need enough water where at least for a qualifier you can spread out a little bit, and I think like Namaka, 3,500-ish acres. But I mean, I'd love to see. Yeah, I guess your idea there would be a good one. I'd like to see a Green Bay where we can fish, the areas where the fish are rather than the areas the fish aren't. I think that would be, um, the one thing I've noticed after fishing the trail is the big water tournaments tend to scare guys. You get a lot of guys that they're too scared of fishing Leech Lake or Green Bay or Lake St. Clair. And I mean the first day Matt and I fished Lake St. Clair, we almost died. I will say that. The fishing was just ridiculous.
Bet.
Just yeah, and there was a storm rolling in, and Matt's like, "We better go," and I said, "15 more minutes." And I've never been so scared I mean, we're talking like sky to water lightning everywhere, 50
Oh,
50-mile-an-hour winds, at least like 6 foot wave. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not even yeah, I'm not even kidding.
That's the worst thing you've been caught up in before on a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was the 15
So-
minutes worth it?
No, we didn't catch. We probably should have went when captain said let's go.
Yeah.
That's why he's a captain and I'm not.
It's hilarious.
So do you guys think you're gonna potentially continue to do the trail moving forward here?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to see what, Brian and I talked and Matt's pretty much out. Brian and I both said, let's see what the schedule looks like next year, if there's I'd really like to skip Cave Run and, we really wanted to fish the Leech tournament again, which was the weekend before Tonka.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of chose that one over Tonka. And I mean, Tonka is a fun fishery, but that is a pain. I mean, that's like Minocqua chain on steroids on 4th of July.
Yeah.
You want to talk about, as many idiots and as big of boats as you can put on a body of water, and that's it. I heard the boat landings were just insane.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
people were taking like an hour just to take out, or like a half an hour just to have their truck back out of their spot to get in line for another half hour to take out. And that's
I mean,
just brutal.
it's big metro fishery. I mean, that's kind of where we had a little hesitation with doing it is, going right from Madison to, essentially Minneapolis. But real quick, I think we're kind of wrapping up on time. And this is one thing I just wanted to ask before we ran out. We got to meet Brian a few times, your partner, through the trail this year. He seems like a really even keel guy. And I kind of wanted to ask, you've fished, it sounds like, with a handful of partners over the years. What, in your eyes, what do you think makes a good tournament partner?
Well, you ever notice there's guys you fish with where it just works and you catch fish, and there's other guys you fish with where it seems like you're not on the same page, and you want to do one thing and they want to do something else every time, and it wears on both of you and it affects your productivity. And I guess the number one thing is you got to fish with someone that you catch fish, that it works. Your fishing styles complement each other, and you like fishing the same stuff. You like fishing the same speed. You agree when you should camp and when you should be, moving. I guess, Matt and I were, trust me, we had our disagreements. Not saying we ever got in fights or anything, but there were definitely times when I would say we need to start here, and he'd say, no, we're starting here. And a lot of the times I would say, okay, I got confidence in you, let's do it, and it would work. And there were tournaments where we were fishing what he wanted to fish, and I said, Matt, this is 100% not going to happen. We need to go here. And he's like, you think so? I'm like, do you agree? And I'm like, do you think it's a good idea? And he's like, well, it's a good idea if we go there and we catch 2 fish. It's a bad idea if we don't. Well, we went there and we caught 2 fish, so it was a good idea. But yes, I've had to go the other way many times too. But yeah, you need someone that you get along with, that you fish well with. I guess I listened to Danny Watusik up on the podium when he was taking their top and talking about how much fun it was, and I'll admit I don't know if fishing with me is that fun. When it comes to, I can have fun when I'm catching fish. It's hard for me to have fun when I'm not catching fish, and I get pretty quiet and pretty driven, and I've got one goal in mind, and that's to catch. Matt and I would go hours without saying a word sometimes. because we were both that driven to succeed. And not saying we didn't have fun. I mean, trust me, there's plenty of beers getting drank and stuff like that, during the good times. But so I guess I sounded like those guys really had a lot of fun, and I try to have fun too. But I guess when it comes down to it, I want to catch fish. That's what's fun to me.
Did you play like sports growing up or anything that kind of ignited this competitive edge? Because I think Gus and I and Brian too, we grew up playing a lot of competitive sports, and like it's translated into musky fishing for us. Like it's our outlet to compete now. A lot of the people we talk to, in our circle of friends that musky fish and stuff, most of them, really don't care for tournaments for, a lot of good reasons.
Mhm.
But for us, it's like, man, this is a lot of fun. Like for all the reasons that you don't like it, like I'm sick in the head and I do like it. Like this stuff is fun to us. So I'm just kind of curious as to where that, I guess, competitive side comes from.
I guess I didn't really play sports in high school. I did a lot of fishing and hunting. And I was usually out killing something or trying to catch something when other guys were playing sports. And I kind of lost my drive to hunt as I started fishing more and really liking late fall fishing. I mean, that's kind of my favorite time of the year. I kind of got away from hunting altogether. I haven't killed anything in many years. But I guess the tournaments allowed me to compete at something I was good at,
Right
So
on.
I think, a lot of people, and I guess it's not just competing against other people. You're competing against a fish. You're competing against conditions. You're competing against yourself sometimes because there's times where you think you're almost convinced you're not going to catch a fish, and then you do. You do find something that works. And I guess to me, it's like it's problem solving. It's people that don't fish don't understand the level of thinking, especially with muskies that goes into it. Matt and I have had the conversation before about how stupid we are, because if we can pattern muskies and figure this out, why aren't we fishing bass tournaments and making millions of dollars? Because any idiot can catch a bass.
Hey, kind of true.
Now you get to the level that they're on, and it's a whole catching
That
a
is
bass
different.
one thing, catching a limit of 5-pounders is something else. But so yeah, I think it's for me it's I guess it's not just the money. It's not I like winning the money because then I can go splurge on a bunch of baits I don't need.
There we go.
But I've always got the like I said, I'm an adrenaline junkie, I guess. I love the adrenaline of catching the fish in the especially a big, a nice fish in the tournament. It really, it gives me a rush that I have trouble getting, elsewhere, I guess.
I can relate. Legally, yeah.
Right.
I mean, Gus, I mean, I think back, I mean, it's crazy. It's so far, like long away, it was a couple years ago now, but that first time we did well in a PMTT, our first ever PMTT event we fished, that first fish that hit the net was like, I've never shaken this much for a 32-inch fish. Like I was, just freaking out. And then when we popped our big one, it was like, I think I said things and made noises that had never come out of me before. Just didn't know where that was. Like, it was embarrassing, but I was like, okay, I like doing this. This is a lot of fun. Like I want to keep doing this.
So,
But
yeah, we'll definitely probably fish the trail next year. It just depends on where it's at. everything like that.
Cool. Gus, you got any late fall fishing questions before we let Nate go here?
I mean, yeah, I might as well maybe do couple quick tips on the late fall. So say somebody's got a weekend coming up here. Let's just kind of kick because it could go into way too big of a topic if we talk about turnover. Let's just say it's post turnover, got say upper 40-degree temps or so for water temps, and somebody wants to get out. It's going to be above freezing during the daytime, below freezing at night. What's kind of a tactic you're going to do? Are you going to run some live bait and cast? Are you going to live bait only? Do you troll? And what are maybe like a top couple baits people should probably look into and something maybe they should look away from, throwing out there?
Well, I have done in the past a fair amount of trolling in late fall, but I guess it's not my preferred way to catch fish. Again, I'm an adrenaline junkie, you know. I want the rush, and I love hearing the drag scream, you know, the real scream when you get a rip, but like fighting a trolling fish just isn't the same as fighting a casting or a live bait fish. I guess to me, live bait fish fight better than any fish you catch, because most of the, you know, with a quick strike, you're ripping the hooks free of the sucker. And when they don't have that bait blocking their mouth, they can close their mouth. They just tend to fight. Even in cold water, they fight so much harder. I've caught 42s and 43s that I swear while I was fighting them, it was going to be a 48 or 49 or 50, just because every time you tried to bring it up, it just go back down to the bottom. So I guess I trolling is very effective. In the conditions you're describing on, say, Cisco water, that's probably the most effective way to catch fish. I tend to avoid Cisco water right after turnover for a couple weeks until the Cisco's really start spawning, because then it seems like the casting bite picks up again. And had some really good days casting, jigging bondy, you know, stuff like that. But I'll fish a lot of, you know, more or less sucker based lakes, and I fish hard bottom breaks. Usually I run a couple suckers. I like running one down, you know, right on the bottom basically, and I'll run another one on a float way behind the boat, you know, 75 feet or so behind the boat. I like to get one as far away from the boat as possible. And then I cast a lot of rubber post turnover, red October tubes, Medusas. Last year, the Bam Bam was by far the best bait in my boat in late fall.
The junior or the big one?
The big one.
Big one, nice.
Yep.
Would you weight it down heavily or not, or want more of the hang with it?
As I get into late fall, I like some of the hang. I was using the shallow with the 1 ounce weight on it.
Okay.
Okay, so I mean,
yeah,
it's a little lighter than the deep with the 1.5, you know what I mean? A little bit lighter, but it's still, you're working down 15 feet pretty easily.
sure. Yeah, because that's what you kind of need to get down to.
Yeah.
You're saying like the break lines where it goes from hard to soft bottom.
Yep.
Is something you'd like to target? Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you focus on cribs much? Wood,
Oh, yeah.
rocks, or
If cribs are around, I'm gonna fish them. But I guess I like to fish that chunk rock.
Okay.
When you can see, and I mean, you know, there's depending on the lake, but I like to fish lakes with limited good late fall structure, rather than lakes that are covered in good late fall structure. Because if you have limited good places for them to be, generally they concentrate a lot more. And because you're fishing slower, you know, the less moving around you do and the less choices they have to be, the more, the more fish you catch and the better your chances are at catching a big one. So I mean, I there are lakes I fish that, I mean, shit, you could fish all the way around the shoreline and really be in good water. And we're talking one lake in particular. I mean, it's 3,000 some acres. And it's pretty hard to find a spot that doesn't look good for late fall over most of the lake. But I hate fishing in the late fall because there's just so many places they can be. So I guess I try to pick lakes that do have good late fall structure, but and when I mean that is Rocky Point, steep breaks to the basin. I'm big on finding there's always spots on a lake that muskies pack up on in the late fall, and generally where you're talking rocky points, steep breaking shorelines. The key is they're near an expanse of deep water. And usually the largest expanse of basin, they're adjacent to that. They're very close to it. And if you can find, the points with the good rock, and, if you've got a lot of sandy breaks and then you've got one section that's got some nice rock on it, some points, some insight, some variety to the break rather than just going from, 10 feet to 50 feet, like, not, you know what I mean? I like some variety. So usually I kind of key in on those spots and fish 2 or 3 spots in a day, but I fish them really well. I don't want to be moving while the bite's going on.
I agree. November sets in and I'm maxing out at maybe 3 spots a day, unless it's tough and gotta find them if those spots are producing, or trolling tells, if I troll and the bait's just elsewhere, then gotta follow that, gotta follow where the food source is. I got one last specific question because I'm just kind of curious on what you think about this. So say you're not fishing a Cisco body of water, you're fishing like a sucker base like you're talking about, because Cisco bodies of water, if the Ciscos are spawning those things at night, will push in super shallow. People can notoriously catch some pretty big fish in late fall on shallow water, but these sucker base lakes or panfish where there isn't a fall spawning bait fish, do you ever try to look for some green weeds? Have you found some success in that on
Oh yeah,
fishing weeds late November, mid-November? Yeah.
I guess I get to mid-November and late November, you won't ever find me not on Cisco water.
Oh, sure. I got you.
Just because of the girth, I guess
Yeah.
the ultimate goal is a 40-pound, Wisconsin fish. That's really what I like to catch, a Tom Gelt muskie. And I've probably touched 35 a couple times, but I know I've never come close to 40. So that's really where I think your odds are for that kind of fish. So those are generally the lakes I fish. Now, that being said, yes, in the past, before I kind of got that in my head, yes, I did catch fish from green weeds. I mean, on clear lakes with nice deep weed edges, I mean, I would fish weeds, and I have caught muskies on Cisco lakes and green weeds in November.
Sure.
Typically, if you get those warm Novembers, it seems like the way I want to catch them stops working quite as well, and they start acting more like warmer water fall fish. You'll find them shallower. You'll find them more on sand and weeds than rock, is what I found.
Interesting. That's a good little nugget there for sure. We'll probably have to pay attention to that because I could, who knows, this fall, you never know, but there's probably going to be a stretch or two in there where it's going to get warm. It just seems like it always does. and we've had some weird bites in some stupid shallow water on really warm, shitty days in the fall, but they're very random, hard to predict because they're sitting so much further up. Um, yeah, so but
Warm,
yeah.
warm, warm fall days, south winds, stuff like that. Casting, trolling, shallower. You get that
Going a little
cold,
bit quicker.
you get those cold snaps, and I'm thinking deeper live bait jigging, more vertical type presentations tend to outproduce. But I guess I got a buddy that I've done a lot of late fall fishing with, and that's always his motto is if he gets a fall warm up, he's going trolling, and he generally catches some nice fish doing it. And I'm stubborn, so
Come on, get out the big cranks. But no, I understand. I do always enjoy casting and live bait more, but I've been getting into the trolling game and have definitely enjoyed that and just found the success in it. Plenty of days where soak suckers for 3-4 hours, one good moon phase, and nothing even thinks about eating it. Nothing comes up in the artificial, and throw in the trolling lines, and boom, boom, they start eating that. So I try to look at each day kind of as a new day, seeing what they're going to want to eat that day, whether it's trolling, casting, or suckers, live bait.
well, and you're guiding, so a lot of times you've got the need to produce. You know what I mean?
Right,
Uh,
right.
and I do a very little bit of guiding, and I know the feeling. So yes, if I've got people that are depending on me to catch fish, I'm going to do exactly what I have to do to catch fish.
Sure.
I guess if I can fish, if I'm just fishing for fun, a lot of times I'll work harder and try and catch them the way I want to catch them. But
Yeah.
on the trolling topic, I will say I was probably one of the first guys to have a headlock in Vilas County, and that fall was really fun.
I believe that. I've heard good things about when they first came about up here, and now I can't catch a fish on the supernatural to save my life.
That
So,
I caught one last year on one. I did troll a little bit last year and caught one fish, but definitely don't produce like they did once. That is, it seems like everybody wants to troll the legend plows and giant shit, and I think sometimes the 9-inch grandmas and depth raiders and the smaller stuff they don't see quite as much catches more and bigger fish.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I agree there, but I still do throw out some of the big stuff, but I always try and mix it up. I don't go like, if I have two lines out, I'm not typically going both big. Typically going one small, something
Yep.
in the 7 to 9 inch, and then something in the 10 to 13 inch for the other bait, and kind of going from there, or just being stubborn and sticking to it because just knowing that at least one of them is going to get hit if they're eating trolling stuff. But um, I think that kind of wraps up the podcast here. Nate, thank you for sharing all this time. I know we went a little bit over what you said, but I guess that
Oh,
just kind of happens when chatting muskies. It kind of happens all the time when you just start rambling and riffing, and we love that. Um, but I think those are great nuggets on late fall fishing. We talked so much about tournaments. I didn't even think we'd have enough time to talk about that, but that's definitely some good stuff. And I think there's so much more we could get into because, Max and I are early into tournament fishing, and we've always seen your success, and it's, looked up to you, and for sure that um, you're one of the greats, if not the best tournament angler to come about in, what do you say, 2005, basically 20 years of tournament fishing, of all the success you've had. So really appreciate your time tonight. And we're going to have to get you back on, maybe this winter, and when there's a little more time to go around, when when we're not all so busy with work and all that stuff. Not that we don't in the winter, but it just seems like there's more time because
Yeah.
Nothing else.
there's nothing else to do except just, hop on and chat or
Yeah.
something like that. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Hey, no problem. And yeah, I'd be glad to come back. So just let me know when you want to do it again. Winters are pretty quiet for me. So
Right on.
Thanks, Nate.
yeah, no problem, guys.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you. Have a good
Take
night.
care.
Take care.
You too.
All right, we can't thank Nate enough for sharing his time tonight to chat muskies on the podcast here with the fellas. Really enjoyed that talk and just enjoying, everything about tournaments. We chatted about plenty of successes, which is very easy for him to do because he has tons of successes. He's done very well in many, many tournaments, and just a couple, uh, tough times or rough tournaments or things to kind of take away, as we like to say, and what you can work on and what tips for tournaments and how you can learn from your mistakes and go forth and go to these bodies of water out in the boonies or metro fishing or very famous bodies of water and do well. And but yeah, it was great having Nate on. We chatted with him here and there during the PMTT when Max and I were traveling. Him and his partner Brian, great guys, great to chat with. But I think before we go into some other stuff we got here for the outro, let's chat on some takeaways here. Um, Maybe just a quick one from each of you, what you learned or what you'd like to use or something that he said that resonated with you here tonight. I know for sure. I guess I'll just quick put out mine for the fall tactics one. I really um what I heard is kind of like the warm-ups is you can kind of get the fish possibly a little bit shallower, target some weeds, sand, and then as soon as it starts getting deeper, move into that live bait game. Try jigging bondies. We've dabbled in that a decent bit, caught a couple. But that's kind of just a pretty solid rule of thumb and how to kind of simplify it. And uh, another way that he said to simplify it is go to lakes with less good deep fall structure so that you kind of just end up knowing right about where they are. It gets a little bit easier to find them. So that was kind of cool. I haven't really thought about it like that because obviously we got our late fall spots. We like to look around and check Navionics on certain lakes and be like, oh, that'll be a good fall spot, or we should come back here in the fall and fish that. But then end up having like 50 spots throughout the course of the year on 12 different lakes or something like that. And the fall is not very long. You don't have much time to do that. So kind of breaking it down a little bit smaller might be beneficial. But I don't know if anybody wants to go next or what you got thinking, Brian, Max?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting just hearing him in general talk about various stops that tournaments have made, different locations in the past, and how they've either been great or been horrible. I kind of laughed, Gus, when he brought up Soda because we used to drive past that when we went to school in Eau Claire. I remember
Mm-hmm.
we had talks
Yeah.
about it, like, oh, is there muskie in there? We did like a little bit of research. I remember seeing a bunch of people saying like low volume, but potential for a giant. And sure enough, it was low volume when he went out there. And then other than hearing about all these different lakes, I'd say just his point about fishing like the dirty slop during a front like you guys had in Eagle River. I feel like the people tend to kind of like look, out in the abyss more or go to deeper water if they're not catching them along a weed edge. And I think kind of like early in this fall period like that, that's a good point is that these fish are just going to kind of be anchored up in these shallow weeds and you pretty much have to hit them in the head. So I know it's a tough way to fish when it's choked out weeds, but fish are just sitting up in there, and obviously they found a couple, so it's cool to hear. How
Yeah,
about you,
awesome.
Max? What stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I just liked all the tournament talk. Obviously it's something we've really gotten into the last few years and enjoyed a lot. So just hearing somebody who's done it for, a longer time than we have, obviously, and hearing all the stories, battling through the adversities, winning tournaments on the second day and short amount of times. Just kind of good perspective to hear. It makes you realize that you're probably closer than you think on, you're not really ever out of a tournament until you really are, until the final bell rings. And listening to him talk about like packs of fish, just not typical verbiage when you talk about musky fishing. Usually I think most people, the way they kind of think about musky fishing in a way is like, you fish one spot, you fish another spot, you fish, and you pick off a fish here, you pick off a fish there as you kind of go throughout a day. And like they're kind of talking about, eating up on like a pack of muskies. And it's almost like you talking about like a saltwater fishery in a way. Just thought it was kind of a cool, different like visual almost the way they talked about that. We have obviously in tournaments, we've talked about finding pods of fish, but um obviously when you have talking to somebody with that much success, kind of just hearing the way they think about the water, think about how these fish are acting and what they're doing, it's just kind of a cool perspective. So yeah, it was all good. But I guess Gus, to kind of maybe wrap us up here this evening. How's the bite been in Eagle River? Obviously, it was very difficult during the PMTT championship. We labored on about that. I came back up to the North Woods to extract some revenge on these muskies, and it just did not go as planned. Still, we're battling some terrible wind. You name it, just the weather has not been on our side here. The
No.
last few weeks, but sounds like the tables turned for you the other night and you finally started finding some fish to put in the
Yeah.
bag.
Yeah, so when the tournament got over with, the championship, finally, another kind of cold snap set in. Like it couldn't just be 80, 85 forever. And finally used suckers for the first time. It's the latest I've ever gone before using suckers. I usually try and use them a little bit sometime in that early to mid-September. Usually you get some water temps creeping into the mid 60s by then. Wasn't exactly the case. We kind of had it. There was one cold snap where maybe I could have bought some, but I just never ended up coughing up to go and grab them. But I think it was like October 2nd this year was the first day we ran suckers. Luckily did get one that day. One bit right before sunset. Started late morning and had immediately fish coming up and staring at them. I think I think actually that day I was going to bring live scope and I forgot it. So we only ran one boat side sucker and I was standing in the back. And every time we would like side image one or the sucker would freak out, I would just raise it up a little bit. I'd be like, oh yeah, there's one following it. Then like every 5 minutes I'd raise it back up. Oh yeah, still following it, not eating it. Typical sucker shit. But finally they do eat them. Just gotta wait for that window to open up. So far, all but one of the sucker eats are boat side. So I think it is and has been very key to keep one close while you're casting because all the hot fish typically are coming from you raising them on a lure and bringing them to the boat. And the first thing they're going to see apart from your lure is that boat side sucker. So I think that's the most key. If you're gonna run one, run it at the boat. It's kind of my rule of thumb for beginning of the year, and then obviously later into the fall when it gets colder, you kind of rely more on live bait, so you end up running two. And I pretty much, Nate nailed it, right on the head that, you run one far away on the float, up a little bit higher, and then the one at the boat towards the bottom. That is definitely a very, very solid post turnover game plan. We'll chat more about that once the time comes, but I guess going on the bite's been it just took a turn and turned into very phenomenal. You know, Max and I had a rough go at it. We unfortunately, of the 2 days that we fished when you're up, we chose the good weather day to fish a particular body of water that I have become a little more infatuated with, but I know that it's very low density, but know that if you contact a fish, it's going to be very large. It was I've only fished it twice solo. Seen one fish out of the 2 days. It was about mid 40s, but you know, side image some here and there, and they never look small. And we went out there and started on a minor. We had a fish go on the screen on side image, go straight to the back sucker. Definitely grab it. Well, we found out because a little bit later pulled that sucker up and it had two gash marks in it, but never peeled out more line than, you know, a foot or two. So just grabbed it and left. And as that was happening, Max's like next cast on blades raised a super hot, you know, 43, 44 incher. And we're like, all right, this is freaking game on. And then it just shut down. I don't know what that window was or what we found or what happened after that, but you know, good old classic window shutting. And the following day it blew, I don't know, sustained 20, 25 from the south and wind gusts up to 40 easily. And I mean, we sucker fished. We barely trolled. Even trolling was tough in those waves, but even sucker fishing in the slack water, you know, quote unquote, freaking slack water, still had to keep on the trolling motor pedal on my Terova at speeds of like 5, 6, or 7 constantly the whole time and just getting blown around out there. Felt like we just couldn't really stay on the spot very easily. It was just a tough day overall, but um, weather took a turn. I was able to quick do a run down to Green Bay to troll with some of our good pals. I was out there with Phil and Jamie. We unfortunately did not boat a muskie, got one big pike, had one other rip, and it ended up coming off. But I think it was a tough bite overall that particular day. Those guys are in the loop with most of the guys that are guiding there, fishing there in general. And I think in the time that we fished, we didn't troll the whole day, but from when we started to when we ended, everybody that they talked to, nobody got a single rip. So just one of those days that we got unlucky that Dad and I drove down to fish in particular. So unfortunate, but the way it is, you know, that's what happens when you're trying to target the really, really, really big ones. And just felt good being down there, knowing that at any chance it could be a really big fish. But came back up north, and although it was tough before that, just had some inclinings on some lakes, and the bite completely turned around, and these fish are just going, you know, dumb for almost anything. We got the first trolling fish of the fall this past week. Um, Casting, they're still going after casting lures pretty darn hard, and nothing on blades yet, but I've heard some reports, some people getting some fish on blades still. I haven't really been using it too heavily, but recently it's been mainly just rubber and jerk baits, you know. That's pretty much the game plan out there. And top water. If you got a flap tail laying around, don't be afraid to throw that out there. If you're in some sort of sunset time frame or maybe got a little bit of cloud cover midday, do not turn away from some sort of top water right now in this pre-turnover time frame. I'll just slip in before I wrap up here that the water temps in the morning right now are about 56, 57-ish. You know, a couple places might be a little colder now once the podcast is out. Still some cold nights, and by afternoon we're getting up to 58, 59-ish degrees. So it's dropping. Turnover is upon us. I have not witnessed it yet on any particular lake that I've been to, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it in the very, very near future some of the smaller shallow stained lakes, whether it does develop a thermocline or not, it still can sometimes dirty up when some of the water starts to flip. So um just be aware of that and try to go to a much larger lake if you're witnessing turnover on smaller lakes, because if a smaller lake is just turning over, it means there's nothing else smaller that's done turning over. So you should probably go back in time and do the pre-turnover on a larger, clearer, deeper lake, or look for current, which is starting to become a little bit difficult right now with all the lack of rain up north. But still, a river system like the Wisconsin River is always going to have current. So um, look for something like that if you really don't want to deal with turnover or don't know very many particularly, deep Cisco-based lakes, or just any deep lake in general that's clear and turns over later. So I think that's what I got here. Going forth, just look for using live bait, like I was saying, utilize that and keep on casting. The casting bite's going to continue to be pretty solid, and should probably keep taking advantage of it while you can before, like Nate said, it can pick back up on Cisco-based bodies of water when the Ciscos are spawning. But we're a long ways from that. We'll chat more on that later. So I think that's what I got for uh, as quick as I could, a little update here in the Northwoods. So with that being said, I'll just quickly give out the socials. We got Muskies on Tap on Instagram, and my guide service page is Suggs Fishing Guide Service. You can find that on Instagram, Facebook. Website is www.suggsfishing.com. My last little bit of openings in October are late in the month, or if you do want to get out in November, just get in touch with me. Haven't or probably won't post specific days. But if you're just looking to possibly get out and pretty hardcore about fishing late in the fall, let's definitely get out there. So I think that wraps up another week here. Muskie's on tap. So without further ado, unless Max, you got anything to add, Brian, you can take us away here.
Real quick, what's the word going on in the Northwoods as far as how the fall is going to shake out? Any farmer's almanac table or anything like that? Are we looking at a cold fall,
Groundhog see
snowy
its shadow.
fall? What are we looking at here? What's the word on the street? What's the trees telling you?
So I haven't really looked at the farmer's, almanac going forth, but looks like we're gonna get a slight Arctic blast towards the end of the weekend.
We getting an El Nino? Are we on an El Nino
The La
watch?
Nina this year,
I don't.
Lady
which means
storm.
colder winter than normal. So
I heard that
That'd be
it's not.
awesome.
It's gonna be
You saying the
potentially another.
female version is colder, harsher?
La Nina, yeah, a little
Ouch.
colder, a little harsher. Yeah, ain't gonna be fun.
It's crazy. Sorry, Gus, what you're saying?
No, I think Brian just answered it. I
Oh,
think he's hit
La
the nail on the
Nina.
head. I don't even need to say anything else there.
I mean, he is
No,
our
but
weatherman. He is our
True.
weatherman. I
he
mean, he
is
was
the weather guy.
giving me hurricane updates before we hopped on the pod here. I feel like I'm
Well,
locked in now.
there's another hurricane hitting, so does that mean like next week it's gonna be 85 degrees and flat calm, or because that's what
I
happens when
mean,
the last one that
yeah,
hit. We got
I
a
don't know.
heat wave up
Nah,
here.
you'll be chilling.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, weather
You'll
guy.
be straight.
No.
He gets on. Hey, we'll turn it to our local news. You guys will be straight. You guys are chilling.
And all right, back to the sports.
Speaking of which, how about them Packers?
How about them? They escaped. Didn't look too great, but a win's a win.
Man, I don't think they've looked good yet this entire year.
No, but they've been
Honestly.
good enough to win. They can win ugly, which is always a good sign. We got plenty of time. They hit their
Yeah.
stride last year to what, week 10, 12?
Yeah, it was late.
It was
It was
late.
late. So not really worried about it. Still preseason. Kinda. I mean,
Yeah, not
we
really.
still, I mean, we got to win some
long
more
season.
games here.
Yeah.
I mean, the freaking Vikings are 5-0. Like that
doesn't really count.
Yeah, gotta just
Kind of
cut
just a
that out
fluke.
here soon.
Easy schedule.
Luke season.
Yeah,
No,
too many
nobody
buddies
cares
in my
about
ear right
NFL
now.
anyway. Everybody watching college these days.
That's just not
Sure,
true.
sure. Just totally not true.
I saw this thing where ticket prices for the Texas A&M game were like twice the price of Chiefs Niners.
Well,
Same
isn't that
weekend.
probably because like a lot of those teams haven't played each other in a long time during the regular season? Now with all this conference realignment and stuff, there's like
No,
different matchups
but up
going on.
against the Super Bowl rematch, I mean, it just means more in college, and that's just the bottom line that you guys have to understand.
It's just it's not A, it's not true. B, this probably has a lot to
It
do with
is
the
true.
fact that your Ohio State Buckeyes are actually good again this year. So you're just
And
more
speaking of
dominant.
which, guys, big matchup this weekend against Oregon.
Why'd you just take us away, dog?
I was gonna say, just wrap it up,
All
dog.
right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Muskies on Tap. Shout out to our special guest, Nate Osfar, for coming on, an absolute legend in the tournament scene. Very generous for his time tonight, blessing us with his knowledge and some incredible stories as well. Guys, we're entering the fall period now. Full suck is on. We are getting into turnover time, turnover watch. Going to be a La Nina this winter, nice and chilly, nice and cold. Make sure to stack up the clothes. But it's going to be hot this weekend out in Eugene, Oregon, when the Buckeyes come into town as 3-point favorites. It's the lock of the week. Make sure to put your money in now. They're going to win by 2 touchdowns. You heard it for your first. We'll revisit this next pod. Everybody have a good night. Peace.